limitations of digital, that it doesn't replace being in the same physical space with other people, and realizing how much we value that as humans, how much we value the shared experience, and knowing that, you know, hearing the reactions of the people around us, being part of the laughter or the gasp or whatever it is that happens at a festival, and wondering how you might be able to give people that kind of experience online. I can't say I have the answer to that yet. And I'm not aware that anybody does, but I'd love to hear about it if they do. But also thinking about the things that digital can do that face-to-face events can't do as well. So there, you know, there are extraordinary things like the fact that we're all here today in our different countries, able to have this conversation together, which is something that would be much harder to do in the physical world. So I think accessibility is a really great quality of digital, that more people and more diverse kinds of people can join things, but then there are limitations as well. And I don't think we've finished exploring it, what we might be able to create.
I'm going to come back to you to ask you what in your mind was your most unique offering. But let me go to Moneeza. Based on what you said, Jane, you talked about accessibility. Now, in a normal year, we would have found it very difficult to get Moneeza across to India or even get her a visa. But here we've had this wonderful opportunity to have her back at the Jaipur Literature Festival, something that she's been to. But in recent years, because of the geopolitics of the region, we unfortunately have not been able to bring together so many of our colleagues from the neighborhood. Despite everybody knowing that people-to-people connections is perhaps the one way to resolve many conflicts in troubled places and troubled times. But Moneeza, tell us about Lahore. You know, Lahore is the most vibrant, vivacious. Everybody talks about its streets, about the retail therapy, the unique kebabs, the juttis that you can get. And, you know, an invitation to the Lahore Literature Festival is in many ways, certainly for people from the subcontinent, stepping back into the past, as well as connecting in many ways to both the present and the future. But tell us how this has shaped your world, how the pandemic has shaped your world, and perhaps, is there a pandemic in Pakistan? We don't get to hear much about it. So set the context for us. You're on mute, Moneeza.
Thank you. Sorry, can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yep.
So thank you so much for inviting me, and hello to everybody. Good afternoon from Lahore, Pakistan. It's a beautiful afternoon. Spring is finally here after a very, very long winter, and we can look forward to a very long hot summer, as can you, I'm sure, across in India as well. Yes, I think what you just said about the fact that you cannot share too much of each other across the borders, and yes, how well I can understand and agree about the fact that people-to-people contact is the only contact that's going to actually put all of this rather bad blood, if I may call it, behind us. And being Faz's daughter and being growing up with this belief that Faz had and will continue to have, because somehow we can't seem to find words that we can call him has passed on, but he still lives on, as I think you probably understand in India as well, as we've seen through his poetry. So this feeling that we need to, as much as possible, of course, the borders are there and the borders remain there, but the fact remains that we should try and see if we can rise above these rather silly, if I may call them silly, but very, very violent and very horrible feelings that we have for each other, which really should now be, if possible, put to a side and moving on. I agree so much with what Jane has just said about the festival and the fact that the accessibility is there, as she's sitting in Sydney, I'm sitting in Lahore, and so on and so forth. And it's also, Jane, I would like to say, less expensive, because trying to find air tickets to bring people across and donors and donations, etc., it's been very difficult. But, you know, if I may say so, Sanjoy, that, and what Jane just said, that very feeling of feeling the vibrance, feeling the togetherness, feeling the fact that everybody's here for one cause or for one feeling or for one ideology or for one message, that you can't seem to get in these little boxes at the top of the screen. And that is why, of course, last year we were all trying to get our head together, and some of us did and some of us didn't. And we are still at this moment not at all sure what November will be like. That's when the Fairs Festival is held. I mean, on the 13th of February, that is his birthday coming up on Saturday, we will have a small little function at the Fairs Ghar, and just few people will get together and cut a cake and think about it. But it's, of course, no way in any way will it replace. We can never replace, I think, this getting together, remembering, talking, sharing. That's all very well. But as we just saw the film that you began your presentation with, I mean, I have been to JLF, so I know, and I just that fever. It's almost like a fever. It's almost like as if everybody is waiting to for the JLF or for the LLF or for the Fairs Festival and so on and so forth. What is happening in Lahore right now? I mean, COVID is there, very much a part of our lives. I happen to be fortunate or unfortunate, depends, to have a doctor who's a son who keeps telling us about the horrible story. But the fact that 2024, mother, I mean, 2024, that's where he's putting it at this time. The travel, the getting together, the hugging, the talking, the meeting. We are sneaking in here. I mean, I was very jealous, very envious, Jane, to know that you have restaurants open and that you, I mean, we do sneak in here and there, but not as bad actually as the UK, maybe another. But Pakistan has had its fair share of the pandemic. We are trying to get on top of it if we can. The vaccine has arrived. But of course, at the moment, they're still figuring out where to and who to distribute it to, etc., etc. It started, the frontline people have started getting it. But of course, Lahore, as you said, Sanjoy, I mean, if I may use a Punjabi term here, jinne Lahore nahi dekhiya, unhe jamiya hi nahi. Anybody who has not been to Lahore has actually not existed, has been born. So it is a beautiful city. Even if I say so myself, this is the best time of the year also, with spring, with flowers, with a cool breeze. But the joy, I think, or the recognition of Lahore is its festivals. I mean, we've unfortunately killed the Basant Festival, which was our own fault, because we just didn't control the strings, and therefore there were too many tragedies. So that had to be banned. But other than that, we've got the Mela Chiraga, we've got the Fairs Festival, we've got the Literary Festival, we've got so many cultural festivals, Karachi Festival. But I don't know what this year has in store for us. And I, for one, don't think that the digital or the online presence can ever replace the human touch or the human feeling or the human collective energy that we get from festivals. And I'm sure the JLF is probably going to feel the same. I don't know. So that's where we stand right now.
Totally. And inshallah, hopefully in November, you will be able to have some version of the Fairs Festival. And talking about Fairs being alive, just a day before yesterday on the lawns in Delhi, where we were shooting some of JLF's new series, we had a rendition of Fairs, and of course he lives on beyond. Sujata said, Moneeza talked about this incredible need, and you really can't recreate that collective energy and the sharing. And, you are part and parcel of the biggest coming together of people in the exhibition of books from the Calcutta Book Fair and the festival that's associated with the Calcutta Book Fair, where that sheer vibrancy of the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who come through your ground to eat, whether it's whatever that jhalmuri or buy a book or buy a cartoon. How have you managed to survive this December, January without that sense of vibrancy and books and going out to the Calcutta Book Fair? And how have you sort of been able to resolve this in your collective heads? And what did you all do?
we've not been able to resolve it actually, Sanjay, because Kolkata Book Fair, like the Durga Puja, it's a product that is owned by every Bengali, every Calcuttan, every West Bengali, everybody. It's something that's part of your calendar, your diary. You just mark those days and you want to go to the book fair. You don't buy your books, or you buy very little throughout the year, but in the Kolkata Book Fair, you want to buy, all your hundreds of books. So it's been very uncertain, as you said. Uncertainties, trials, and tribulations have all hit us. And if everything had gone all right in pre-COVID times, we would have just got over the Kolkata Book Fair and the Literature Festival this Sunday. But that hasn't happened. Now, I think everybody just wants the physical Kolkata Book Fair and the physical Kolkata Literature Festival. 2.2 million people throng the book fair over 10 days. And they're there not just to eat and drink and visit those 700 or 800 publisher stalls, but also to just drop in any of those literary sessions that happen. And now those literary sessions are coalesced under the Kolkata Literature Festival in the last 3 days, ending the penultimate day is the last day, the last Saturday, and Sunday the fair ends. Now, what has happened there, should we have the fair? Should we hold the fair end of January and first week of Feb? Just so nobody wanted to take really any risk with the Kolkata Book Fair, the Literature Festival. So it's just been announced that we will have the physical festival in July.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Congratulations.
So we will have the physical festival in July, and the Kolkata Literature Festival will also be part of it. So that's the good news that I can share with all of you, and we are all looking forward to that, because for Kolkata Literature Festival and Kolkata Book Fair, it's all physical, physical, physical. It's people debating, shouting, creating a mess, It's chaotic, and out of that chaos, this fun and this, exchange of ideas happens. So that's where we are.
Oh, this is fantastic, brilliant news, and I hope the weather holds and you all don't drown in sweat or in the rains in July. But
Weather won't hold, certainly. It will rain a lot, but let it rain a lot, We'll
and you'll still go ahead. But on that happy note, let me ask you, Sujata, you talked about the madness, the collective energy again. I know that of course is one of the USPs of the Calcutta Book Fair. But when I began, I talked about location, location, location. I mean, we really believe that the setting that we have of Diggy is one of the pillars on which this festival has grown. Similarly, Sujata, when the Kolkata book fair had to move first from its original haloed ground, and it moved across the road and then came back to across the Science Museum, and then now is supposed to move again. What is your sense of space, and is space important to festivals? And just for those of you who are watching, during the Calcutta Book Fair, what is amazing is that every publisher, if they've taken an independent space, they create these most incredible looking venues, which you can only do in Bengal, and it recreates in many ways the marquees and the pandals, bringing together both architecture as well as artistic form. But Sujata, how has that sort of helped create an identity? Pretty much like with Durga Puja, it's not so much about the religious celebration aspect, but it's about the artistic contribution to the city, with every pandal or every marquee being just incredibly beautifully constructed, and every image of the goddess, being made of blade and sugar and salt and laddus and all of that, but just beautifully done. So what does that sort of contribute to a festival?
So, see, the location of Kolkata Book Fair has also been part of the huge ownership and controversy. So, green activists have gone to the Green Time saying it shouldn't be held in the Brigade Parade ground, move it from there. The grounds are being, so it was moved. Now, lots of people, no, it cannot move, it's just a temporary thing and we will reinstate it. So it's moved from there to another place. Now that again became, so every time that you want to gain publicity, you just do a case against the Kolkata Book Fair, and you will grab page one headlines, you know. So it's moved from one place to the other, but everywhere that it has gone, and for the last 3 years, it's been in Central Park in Salt Lake. So when it moved from Brigade Parade Ground to somewhere else and then to Milan Mela, which is the international trade fair grounds, they said, no, nobody will go there. It's, you know, out, it's near Salt Lake. Who will go there? But there was not an inch in the Milan Mela grounds, in that trade fair grounds. And then the trade fair was constructing a new international trade center. So they said, okay, we are demolishing this. Now you move to Central Park in Salt Lake. And everybody said that, no, nobody will go to Salt Lake Central Park. It's so far, but there's not an inch now in the Central Salt Lake Central Park. You know, it's really crowded. So wherever Kolkata Book Fair moves, it creates an ethos of its own. Because just as you said, the publishers come and create their own stalls. You know, they create their own spaces, and the people are there to hawk their books, and from small magazines, which are called little magazines here in Kolkata's language, from the little magazines to the small publishers, to the big publishers, to the booksellers, to the newspapers, everybody wants to have a stall there. So wherever it moves, people are moving with it, publishers are moving with it, and the book lovers and the audiences are moving with it. So that's been a unique feature of the Kolkata Book Fair.
So I'm going to come back and ask you about brand Kolkata Book Fair, because I subscribe to your belief, and we've seen that even with the Jaipur Literature Festival, that when we take the brand, people come there, and it doesn't matter where it is. But I'll come back. I'm glad that Ajit has been able to join us finally. Welcome, Ajit. Ajit, where are you right now? Are you in Kathmandu? Are you in Pokhara? Which part of Nepal are you joining us from?
Thank you, Sanjay. Sorry for not joining earlier because I had some technical issues. Finally, I'm able to join you, and I'm glad. Right now, I'm talking from Kathmandu.
You're talking from.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I'm from Pokhara.
Yes, I know you're from Pokhara.
But
And I was asking Pokhara, this beautiful lake resort, about I think 200 or 300 kilometers away from Kathmandu. But Ajit, I was asking all our colleagues who've joined us today as to what is it that's been unique about their festival, and how in this time of pandemic has that changed, and how have you adapted to this new reality? Because we also know that one of the problems that many people have been facing is about bandwidth. Can you actually join? Can you be a participant in the same democratic way of walking into a place? Because sometimes you don't have bandwidth. You have a bandwidth issue. But Ajit, how have you coped in Kathmandu? Tell us a little bit about how your festival has adapted to this new scenario.
Okay. Actually, we are not sure whether we'd want to do the festival this year, last year or not, because the COVID pandemic was, it was getting worse, and we had given up hope that we had to, we won't be able to organize the festival, our ninth editions last year. But somehow every festival directors, every festivals were organizing, taking their festivals online, and we thought that maybe we should also go online as well. But personally, I wasn't, too keen to do the virtual edition of the festivals, because it doesn't have the same kind of charm as the physical one. But our friends and colleagues said that we need to give the festival continuity, and that's why we decided to go with online edition. And then, but it was not 100% virtual. It is a kind of hybrid. We did it in a hybrid model, in a studio setting. We took our speakers to a hill station in Pokhara, and then we recorded the event, and then live streamed the sessions to the audience.
Thank you. Jane, coming back to you, when you think Australia, you immediately think Bondi Beach or watching whales of Albany, or going up to Strawberry Hill, or races in Melbourne at the Melbourne Racing Club. Those are the unique aspects, or going off to maybe Kalgoorlie, or for those who love to go to what used to be known as the Ayers Rock. What do you feel in terms of both location and the uniqueness of the offer that you have? Today, Australia has, of course, the oldest literary festival in the world, which is the Perth Literature Festival, but it's also got a literature festival in every town, in every city, literally. So how do you sort of stand out, and what are the challenges that you have faced in the past?
I think it does depend on the festival. I think some of those festivals, particularly the regional ones, because as you say, we do have a festival in pretty much every town now, really do depend on the place.
You know, Sujata talked about how, despite the Kolkata Book Fair moving from location to location, people just continued to follow it. First from what used to be the center of Calcutta, which was the Maidan, then later moving to opposite the Science Center, and now to Salt Lake. In many ways, the Lahore Literature Festival and the Karachi Literature Festival, like the Jaipur Literature Festival, has found new iterations, whether it's in London or in New York, etc. Do you feel that it's the brand that attracts people? And therefore, is the festival different as you take it from place to place? I mean, how do you create that sense of the Lahore Literature Festival in, say, faraway London or wherever? How do you?
So we had an option. We discussed several options at one time of taking the Fairs Festival across to different places. And we did finally come to the decision that, because apart from the fact that Fairs were Lahore and Lahore was Fairs, it's very difficult to actually carry the whole, if I may use the word paraphernalia, the whole actual people that make the festival. And I'm talking about the people who are behind the scenes of the festival. Of course, the people who visit make the festival, I understand that. But I mean, literally somebody did ask me that, you know, when do you start planning the next festival? And I said the 2 days after, when we've got over the exhaustion of this one, we're into the next one. Or there are times when we're actually planning it as we are going along. So it takes, and you should know, I mean, it takes months of planning to get something like this. And even then, there are so many silly mistakes that you can find, and you say, you shouldn't do that next time, shouldn't do that next time. So it's very difficult for, at least because I consider myself, and I am one of the main organizers of the Fairs Festival, to consider myself to be in a place where I don't know anybody, or whether I don't have that kind of an opportunity to yell and scream and get things done, or to wait and say, please, can we do this, and so on and so forth. Whereas if you're in your home ground, in your comfort zone, then all you have to do is just, you know exactly who to touch, where to touch, what to do, and get it all done. So I still find it a little, sometimes the fact that it's called the Lahore Literary Festival and it's happening in London and so on and so forth. But I think it's a very brave effort, and I think they have done some successful ones in London, as the Karachi Literary Festival also did so, I think, a couple of years ago. But let me be very clear here that for us, for the Fairs Festival, it was a very deliberate and conscious decision to stay in Lahore, to make it as successful, we hope, and as big as we've made it now, and for it to be as meaningful because you see, the Fairs Festival is not only, so it's not only a literary festival because of the fact that there were so many dimensions of the man himself. It has politics, it has human rights, it has gender discussions, it has provincial literature, regional literature discussions, it has dance, it has music, it has poetry, it has books, it has novels, it has travelogues, it has paintings, and it has many other sort of areas. So it's not exactly a literary festival. And therefore, and that probably is something that makes it probably more attractive for the people who. So we get students, we get workers, we get women, we get mussies, we get all sorts of people. So I think we would rather keep the brand, and I like that word. Yes, Fairs Festival is now a brand, and we would like to save that brand, because for us, this is, I'm not talking about myself and the family, we do carry this responsibility on our shoulders as being the next. And then, of course, we have our children now, thank goodness, mashallah, who are carrying it forward as well. And then hopefully their children, if they can speak Urdu. I haven't seen them do it very well these days. But the brand has to stay, and the brand has to be connected with the original person and his vision and his message. So it's very difficult to take that to different places. So we want to stay in Lahore.
I think Moneeza is frozen for a second. So, Sujata, I'm going to come to you, taking from what Moneeza said about brand and location, and she talked about language. You know, the British Council, of course, was a brand and continues to be a brand, and it doesn't matter where it goes, because when you think British Council, you think of it in a particular way. In the many, many years you were there. Similarly, with the Kolkata Literature Festival, today it's a brand. What makes up that brand? I mean, you know, Moneeza very, very specifically talked about the fact that it was attached to Fairs, you know, the great poet, and language. So, coming to the Kolkata Book Fair, do you feel that those are some of the anchor points? That this is a place that every person in publishing across the Northeast and, of course, the East comes together, but they also come together to celebrate Bengali or Bengaliness, or the Bhadralok of Bengali, even though there is a caste, you know, dimension to that. Is that what the festival, what does the festival brand signify? And do you feel that therefore, to be able to recreate that year on year, you have certain tenets on which this is established?
The most important thing for me about Kolkata Literature Festival and for all of us working there is that it's very democratic. So there are 2.2 million people who came last year to Kolkata Book Fair, and everyone has access in some way or the other, listening to the microphones which are you know, broadcasting what's going on in the literature festival, or just dropping in at the venue and listening, and the opportunity to, for anyone who's come there to buy a book, whether it be from Sundarbans or from Siliguri or from anywhere, you know, they've come all the way, traveled all the way with a small cloth bag, jhola, you know, to buy a book and to listen to someone. And the opportunity to listen to a writer you read thoroughly, fully, you know, and you can debate with that writer and come there at the literary festival and talk to, you know, and listen to your writers, argue with them, disagree with them, for anybody. I think this democraticness of the Kolkata Literature Festival is its unique character, because it gives access to anyone who loves reading a book to come and listen to writers and agree or disagree with them. So, also in the Kolkata Literature Festival, as you said, Bengali sessions, we've every day of the 3 days, there is at prime time a very good Bengali session. And, you know, that can't accommodate all the people who want to listen to it. So many people are just listening outside, as it happens in Jaipur Literature Festival, of course. And also there are certain lectures. So last year we started the Nobonita Devsen Memorial Lecture. This was the first time that we started it, and her daughter was the person to give the first lecture on children's books, because she's a writer of children's books, Nandana Devsen. We also have the Jit Paul Memorial Lecture. We also have an opening lecture. And last year, if I may recall very sadly, the opening lecture was given by Soumitra Chatterjee, who's since passed away. And his lecture was on little magazines and the impact of little magazines that they have on our lives. And Soumitra Chatterjee himself was an editor of a little magazine, Ekon, a brilliant magazine for many, many years, you know. So the few lectures which kind of are highlights of this, And every year, Kolkata Book Fair has a theme country. So last year it was Russia, and many Russian writers and critics came and participated in the literature festival. And this year it's going to be Bangladesh. And no guesses why, because it's the 50 years of the liberation movement of Bangladesh. So Bangladesh is the theme country, and there will be many writers. In any case, people of West Bengal and Bangladesh feel that they are the same in their literary tastes and their reading. I mean, writers from Bengal are bestsellers in Bangladesh. So there's this. There will be quite a few sessions on Bangladesh current writers, their writers, Bengali writers. That will be quite a highlight of the Kolkata Literature Festival this year, commemorating the 50 years of the Bangladesh Liberation War. So these are the few things which kind of highlight, and kind of make it quite a unique literary festival. But I think the democraticness of it is the biggest selling point of this festival.
Jane, Sujata talks about the democratic access and democracy as being an attribute to the uniqueness of the Kolkata Book Fair. In your mind, in your festival, because the festival moves from town to town, from city to city, every year sort of evolving as it goes on. Is that your USP, the fact that it travels and it allows access to a whole host of new people who may not otherwise have been able to come to you if you were parked in one spot? I mean, what is the attribute that you look at as unique in your festival?
I think it's not so much that, Sanjoy. The festival has been in Sydney and Perth, so it hasn't exactly been moving from town to town every time. But I think what's unique about it is that bringing together of science and art. And I think that's not something that you see that often. It's unique among Australian literary festivals for doing that. So it's those intersections between scientists who write and writers who explore science or draw on science for inspiration in various ways that is a unique attribute and creates conversations that you wouldn't have anywhere else.
Moneeza, here we've got, again, attributes, a place of coming together of science and the arts. Sujata talked about democracy. You talked about the very fact that the Fairs Festival has to be in Lahore because this, in many ways, was his life. But in the beginning of the conversation, you talked about how Fairs lives beyond, lives within, lives outside of, and therefore he doesn't belong to A or B, town, city, place, person, etc. How do you sort of marry these two contradictions together?
There are times when, in fact, I should say that there are festivals, the Fairs festivals, which are happening across the world. Right now, in the next week, there'll be one in London. Then a couple of weeks later, there's going to be one in Russia. So let's put it this way, that the Fairs Foundation, which is the organization that organizes Fairs festivals and also runs the Fairs Club in Lahore, have made it, shall we say, made it a little quite clear to people that please hold your own festival, your own Fairs festival, and we are here to support, to be with you, to contribute in any way that we can. But of course, we don't have the manpower, 2, we don't have the money, and 3, we just don't have that much time that we can do to organize all festivals across the world or the country, whatever. So they have been, for example, right now on the 15th, because as I said, 13th is his birthday, as 110th actually this year. So there's one happening in Islamabad. Then there's one happening in Karachi a week later. Different organizations organizing it, and then they come to us, and whoever of the family is able to travel. Now these days, of course, things are going to be a little difficult. We do. If anybody can go to England, if anybody can go to America. So that's the way we have sort of, in a manner of speaking, expanded the festival, in which we have been associated, but we haven't run it. We haven't designed it. We have let the people design it, the local people design it, the local academia, the local and so on and so forth. I have been to Chicago, I've been to St. Louis, I've been to New York. Salima has been all over the place as well. I've been to China. Now the Chinese came to us or contacted us, and because of the COVID, they're not actually having a festival, but they're launching a Chinese translation of his books. So we are kind of using that as a way of saying that this will be the Fez festival or the recognition of Fez's birthday and so on and so forth. So that's how we sort of join hands with people across the world, and yet at the same time don't actually take the onus of the entire responsibility of running it, designing it, funding it, which we can't obviously. So that's how we have done it. And I think so far it has been pretty successful. The centennial year, that was 10 years ago. I don't know if you know that or not. We even were invited by the Indian president at that time. These things were different, I believe. And we went to several countries and so on and so forth. But now, obviously, because to some extent, traveling has become a little difficult and it has become expensive. But the local people, whenever they have been organized it, have done it far better, because they know exactly how to do it. I mean, or they have asked us if they could do sessions on fairs in their already existing festivals. So that is also a way of being included in, for example, the Hyderabad festival that happened. Larkana festival happened. So Islamabad. So fairs becomes a kind of an integral part of every literary festival. And we, even now, I think the LLF is also asking that there is a couple of sessions that they'll do. Somehow, it doesn't have to focus on fairs, but it can focus either on related to him, to his books, because every year a new book seems to be coming out on fairs. It's either a research or so on and so forth. For example, hopefully, and if I may use this opportunity to plug my own book, which is coming out this year. It's a book which I've called Conversations with My Father. And so I have we have, my sister and I, we've never printed his letters to us. Obviously, they were personal. But I have now taken that step of moving forward and selecting a few letters that he wrote to us, to me personally, which obviously nobody's seen except me, friends. And then I'm answering them now, 40 years later. And I'm telling them about my life and so on. Hopefully next year, maybe the JLF will invite me, if I can get that book out.
Absolutely.
So, every year there is, so every year different books come out, and then they ask us to participate. Of course, this year we can't say how it'll be, but that's how I think we keep him connected to the readers, connected to the new generation, which is so, because the older generation, my generation, possibly yours as well, met him, know people who met him. But it's the now 30 plus who who never actually met him, but they need to keep that connection. And that's how we are proceeding forward. And we've got a pretty good festival. We've got Faisalabad Festival, Gujarat Festival, Hyderabad Festival, Islamabad, Karachi, Quetta, Peshawar. So there are lots of, as Jane was mentioning, there are lots of festivals now happening on their own. They've just developed. And I think it's a wonderful thing. Wonderful thing.
One of our audience members watching the session from Wales has written in saying, this is very interesting for me as a PhD student, looking at opportunities for the Welsh National Eisteddfod. I wonder if it would be possible to send a link to a survey for festivals which form part of my research. And for our wonderful panelists and guests, please do log on to www.surveymonkey.co.uk and fill out her survey. So Justice, and coming back to you, looking into the future, crystal gazing, the digital world has obviously opened up a whole new phase, and it certainly has for us in Jaipur, where earlier we used to get, say, 500,000 people through our doors to listen to sessions. Now we reach out to about 4.8 million people who watched JLF's Brave New World, and audiences from completely different spaces. I mean, our third largest international viewership today is from Germany. I mean, why Germany? I have no idea. We haven't ever spent any marketing money in Germany. Germany has never shown up as a percentage of people coming physically to the Jaipur Literature Festival in all of these years. Saudi Arabia has. We had 0.9% in 2020, but certainly not Germany. But it's opening up a whole new world. I mean, even within the confines of India, earlier people from the Bangalores and the Keralas and Karnataka used to find it difficult and expensive to come out to Jaipur, where hotels were at 3 times the price. Airlines were charging 3 times the price. But they've been able to log on and our viewership has increased. Do you see, especially now I'm only talking about the festival part of the Calcutta Book Fair, Sujata, your festival. Do you see this hybrid model as a possibility, or gazing into the proverbial crystal ball, how do you envisage the future?
Sanjay, you've got a point. The world has moved on, you know. And earlier we would have, before pre-COVID times, we would have people who couldn't come at the last minute sending a message, and screens in the literary festival showing that message through video or Skype or whatever. Now that looks like as if it's a century old thing. And now it seems that as we move ahead, not just this year or next year, but in the foreseeable future, blended is probably what's going to be with us for a long time. Because, of course, we will have the physical panels there, but one or two, people who couldn't make it or who would love to participate would come in, through Zoom or whatever you have, Google Meet, I don't know, hundreds of all these platforms. So that is, I think that is really the way forward for a literature festival. That even when we go fully physical, there would be an opportunity to get someone from some part of the world to participate because they want to, and they want to share that experience, and the panelists and the audiences want to listen to them. So I think, in a way, blended, what the balance will be, whether how much physical and how much digital, we don't know yet, but blended is here to stay. And of course, it's very welcome because you're getting people from all over to really participate.
Jane, Sujata talks about blended and how access has allowed for so many different people to be able to come online, both as authors, etc. But the big challenge then is that every festival, now that we are, geographically agnostic, so you can access, the Booker Prize winner, and Moneeza can access the same, and Sujata can, and all your other festivals in Australia can. So why will people then come to one or the other of these blended festivals online? How will it be different? What is the experience that's different on the Zoom box? And therefore, the second part of my question is there then an argument that festivals within geographical contours or time zones need to come together and amortize and collaborate and perhaps in many ways merge together as one festival?
It's definitely a challenge. There's no question about it. I mean, we can all reach much bigger audiences, but we're competing for those audiences with many more other festivals at the same time. So, on the one side it's positive, on the other side it's more difficult for us. I don't see the festivals merging though. I think that all the festivals, from the littlest one run by volunteers in a local community to the big behemoths like Jaipur and Kolkata, have their own identity and have things about them that their local people love. And even in the digital space, I think some of that continues to exist. There are the particular ways of curating the themes, the ideas, the relevance to a particular audience that, we don't want to see just one big homogenized world, do we? We want to keep that sense of local identity and distinctness, I think, that you can get from the richness of all the different festivals that exist. So
No,
my possibly slightly over-optimistic take on it.
no, I mean, you do have a point. I mean, we, of course, are now trying to look at those authors who perhaps other people don't have access to. We're going to do a special session with Bill Gates, for example, but none of the other festivals in India will have access to, or Priyanka Chopra, one of our big Hollywood, Bollywood stars, and her book we're releasing, and it'll only release at the Jaipur Literature Festival. But those are, those are unique occasions, and I think, unfortunately, festivals still try and hook big names, but then everybody does the same. So I think, how do we create that uniqueness? But Moneeza, coming to you, what we've seen, 160 odd episodes of JLF's Brave New World online, 4.8 million people viewing it, access to buying the books, etc. But we haven't seen that same energy with which people buy books physically online. I mean, at the end of a session, everybody wants to buy a book. They want to rush off. They want to get it signed immediately from the author who's speaking because they're so moved. They're so amazed with what they've heard. But we haven't seen that aspect of it translate, from this Zoom box. So the question I have for you is that, is there therefore an issue? I mean, yes, people are used to buying from Amazon and Flipkart and all of the other, international book selling chains. But how do you see that? I mean, for example, impacting the very nature of reading and of buying something and something precious like a book. Moneeza, are you with us? So, do we?
I am. You got stuck in the last two sentences, please.
Okay, so what I was saying is, how do you envision this trying to persuade or enthuse people to buy books? And we know how important it is to have a physical book and to actually read it, not just listen to the idiot box like a lot of us do. So how do you see that impact moving forward?
I belong to that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. I was about to start Planchet to sort of get you over the...
Okay. I belong to that generation of fossils who still want to hold the newspaper in my hand every morning, even though I've read the news, heard the news on television the night before. So I and you perhaps are the dying forces that want to actually hold a book and feel it, instead of going into the Kindles and the reads and so on and so forth. And I do understand that I think it's like, Sanjoy, it's like feeling a little bad about it, but having to face it and accept it. So whether we like it or not, the new world order, if I may use the word, is that reading or buying of books is going to become pretty obsolete in the next maybe couple of generations or not. And the reasons don't have to be money or anything like that. It probably has to do with probably time and who knows. And now with this COVID and this hybrid, as you mentioned it, and the opening of this, shall we say, dam that has opened the digital life. I mean, if I can say something which I've been saying for the last 1 year, is that there have been terrible things about the COVID, definitely, but one good thing perhaps about the COVID, and I can't say that about India, but I can say that about Pakistan, is that we have been dragged into the 21st century, literally dragged into it, simply because there was no other way. So I think we are actually going to like it. A lot of us are going to actually start liking it and wanting it to stay and be that way. So I do think that it is the way of the future, whether you like it or not. I agree that it's the most wonderful thing to dash off after the session, to buy the book, and if you're lucky enough to get it autographed by the author themselves, if they're there, and so on and so forth. But as Sujata just said, of course, a couple of people that you might need to see on the screen also, who couldn't come for whatever reasons. And from Pakistan, it will obviously be all about the visas. But I just feel, and I do agree with Jane also, that there is that own identity of each festival that you just, merging is a wonderful idea, Collaborating is a wonderful idea. Cooperating is a wonderful idea. But Jaipur is Jaipur, Perth is Perth, Kolkata is Kolkata, Lahore is Lahore, and I don't think you could. I don't think you could mix them up. I think that drink would be really lopsided and really mixed up. And it has flavors. It has just wonderful flavors, and it's not just a festival. If I may go one step further, it's the thought of looking forward to traveling. It's the thought of the pain of getting the visas, the pain of getting onto the plane, and so on and so forth. It's a change. So that is there. But of course, it will be wonderful to. So I think definitely the world is changing. Books, I hope, can only say, but they are becoming slightly. But even though I might say I have 5 grandchildren in my house, 20 years to 11 years, all of them, they still love books in their own way. They are the most terrible generation that you can't speak to them because they speak another language, they hear another music, they have another vocabulary, but a book for them is a book. So I think there is that connection and it will stay. And it is up to each one of us probably to push it that way. And I think these festivals are a part of that effort. I think that's very necessary. Okay, we bring in, as you said, Priyanka Chopra, and we bring in Rahat Fateh Ali, and you bring in Nasiruddin and so on. So those are wonderful people to see. But the very fact that the book is there, that is what draws them. It's the literary, it's a Jaipur Literature Festival. It's not the Priyanka Let's Meet Festival. So there is that literature part that's very important.
Oh, absolutely. Priyanka's, in fact, the reason why she's on the festival is a new book releases today. It's called Unfinished. So that's the reason. And Bill Gates as well. Let me go to Ajit. Ajit, tell us a little bit about how you see the world in the future, and how are you seeing the new situation sort of evolve, and how has it affected you in Nepal with your festival and with other festivals like yours?
It has affected the way it has affected all the festivals all over the world. And the COVID pandemic, it forced us to go online. But with the situation improving and with people getting vaccinated, I think things are looking up. And I think this year we'll be able to organize physical festivals. And personally, I would love to do that. Because for me, the online virtual literary festival doesn't hold the same charm, and I don't think it will hold the same charm to writers as well. They don't get to travel to different places, they don't get to meet their readers, they don't get to sell their books. So I don't think the virtual literary festival will go on for a long time. And with situation improving and people getting vaccines, I think from later this year we'll be able to organize LitFest, and the people all over the world, the festival organizers all over the world, I think will switch to doing physical LitFest.
Fantastic. And is there a sense of collaboration between you and the other festivals as well, Ajit?
No, not unfortunately not. But what we have done is we have been a catalyst, like you have been to many festivals in the subcontinent. We have been a catalyst for many literary festivals that have come up, and because of the pandemic, many festivals have have closed this year, have shut down, but a few have gone online as well. I think next year, I think we'll see more literary festivals coming up.
And Ajit, across Nepal, you also have a number of different dialects, even though you have a similar script. And has the literary festivals given impetus to those? Has there been new writing coming out of these different dialects and scopes and forms and stories?
In Nepal, very little is being written in national dialects apart from Nepali and English. So we as a festival director, we have tried to give space to people speaking other languages, people writing in another languages like Tharu or Rai and Limbu languages. But I think there are very few books being written, there very few writers writing in regional or mother there in regional dialects. So we haven't been able to give space or talk much about literature written in other dialects.
Jane, coming back to you, one of the bigger challenges that many people have been, we've been doing a series of these directors roundtables that we're more and more hearing is the challenge of keeping people uh, online to be able to watch. What is your magic formula to get them, of course, to log on first? And then what is the sticky factor that you think that we need to look to, where they watch for more than the average of 49 seconds or 47 seconds, whatever it's supposed to be? And obviously, we've been doing a lot of research in this area because as our numbers continue to grow, our effort has not been so much about growing the number, but growing the amount of time they spend listening to A or B or C conversation. And these conversations, of course, have been very different from our festival conversations because these have been much more one-on-one and therefore more in-depth and far more empathetic and without the distraction of an audience. But what is that thing that you all have been doing, or how do you see being able to tackle that?
Yeah, I think it is a real challenge. We actually have postponed all of our festivals in 2020, so we didn't actually run any festivals in 2020. We ran standalone events, but not full-on festivals. And the reason for that is I think that people really enjoy logging on to watch an hour or 2 hours, but they don't want to spend all day staring at their screen. It's a very different experience from being, in Jaipur for the day, and that's a completely different thing. So I think there's a real challenge there for festivals appealing to a digital audience. Maybe we have to accept that the digital audience will dip in and out, that it won't be there for the long haul in the way that people who come physically might. And maybe we program a bit differently then to cater for that. We maybe program across a period of time, a longer period of time for the digital audience so that they can dip in and out and watch things when it suits them to watch them maybe as well. I don't have the answers to this yet, but I've been thinking about it.
No, totally. I mean, for us, for the Jaipur Literature Festival, we've actually extended it now to 10 days to be able to look at how do we program differently. And we're using much more cinematic technique. I mean, the very fact that I'm here, we've got a film crew, we're shooting episodes as we speak, but we're shooting them cinematically to give people a sense that it's not just in their bedrooms, etc. But that brings me to the question to Moneeza. Moneeza, when writers come to festivals like ours, where you have a vast sea of humanity, they almost perform because they know that they have to step up to the table and in many ways, win the hearts and minds of the audiences that we present to them. On Zoom, this is not true because it's a different world for them. Do you see that affecting the way that we're going to be able to present ideas and thoughts and conversations? Is there a difference? Because here you're literally speaking to, we don't know how many people have logged on, for example, even as we speak, or whether there's anybody at all. But we're having a conversation. Has that made a difference? Does that make a difference?
I think that is what makes the difference. And I love this description of writers performing because I can see it in my head. A few of them who are doing it right now or were doing it 2 years ago at the Fairs Festival and other festivals as well. And I do agree, and it's not only just listening but also people come prepared to ask questions or to criticize perhaps also and so on and so forth. So I think, and writers probably need that. They need that one-on-one contact with the reader and to know what is somebody thinking. They may not agree with it, but that's not the point. So I think it's actually a two-way street that way. So and that is probably last year, Of course, last year is out, so let's forget it. But even this year, when we've been sort of talking about a kind of a hybrid, as you just discussed it, but there are 6 or 8 of us who actually are in the decisive decision-making situations, and it was absolutely down the middle. 3 said no, 3 said yes. So we all said, okay, let's wait, because obviously, we have now the summer coming, then we have Ramzan, then we have Eid, then we have Muharram. So after all of that in September is when we actually start thinking seriously about it. So we're going to leave it. But for us this year, it's the vaccine. So let's get the vaccine in order and then we'll see. But I do agree with you, and when you were talking about the hybrid or the Zoom, or when Jane was talking about it, I mean, imagine, Sanjay, the distractions that you have. Is there any way that you or me or anybody can actually close a door and say, nobody come in for the next hour and a half? I'm listening to Moneeza Hashmi speak. It doesn't happen that way. The gardener will come in, the baby will come in, or something will happen. If nothing else, the electricity will go and then you're done. So, I mean, and the very fact, as Jane said, and rightly so, you come for the whole day. You may get bored in a session, but then you have a cup of tea. Or you see somebody, oh, hello, la, 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 la. That is, it's not just the books. It's not all about books. It's about social gatherings. It's about networking. And probably that is what is killing people and has killed a lot of people in the last 1 year. It's the networking. So these festivals are about books, of course. That was the hook. That's the hook that draws the people. But the whole thing is just being in human contact. So I do feel that unless and until we actually bring the physical sense back into it, and it doesn't make sense with the social distancing and the seat in between and 2 people over here, it's not the same thing. So I think unfortunately, even I hope I'm not sounding the voice of doom, but I think we need to bring that back. And I wish Sujata all the best of luck for July. I hope it works. And I will be certainly one who's going to be praying for that to happen. But I think this year is probably going to be a miss as well. Probably, I may be wrong. And I think we need to bring that back, that energy back of rubbing shoulders.
We have a few minutes left, so I'm going to quickly go around each of you. Ajit, I'm going to ask you, Moneeza talked about hope. The festivals is not just about books, but primarily it's about people coming together, networking, and it's about hope. It's about people being able to express themselves, look at a new idea, and in many cases express themselves freely, or in many cases not so freely. Has that been an issue with you, Ajit? Ajit, are you still with us? Can you hear us? With the political
I can hear you.
upheaval in Nepal, has there been issues with speech, with expression, and how do you see hope playing out in 2021?
Currently, we are entering into a very politically unstable times, but that hasn't, affected us anyway in terms of freedom of speech. We are a democracy and pretty liberal at that. But of late, we have seen polarizations between people, and that might come into play later or in the futures when we organize a lit fest. It might be difficult for people to come on stage and debate over a very hot topic or very differing ideologies or ideas. But at the moment we don't have any issues with freedom of press or freedom of expressions. But
On that note, he disappeared into the firmament. As he said, we don't have an issue with freedom of expression. Sujata, hope. How do you see 2021?
Sanjay, physical is what Kolkata Literature Festival is all about within the Kolkata Book Fair. But having said that, in the last few months, 3 of my most enriching experiences have been listening for over half an hour, 40 minutes to Naomi Klein, my favorite author, to, Yuval Noah Harari, for over 40 minutes, to Rajiv Mehrotra speaking about artificial intelligence and the future of young people. And I actually did what Moneeza was saying is very difficult to do. I locked my door and I listened to it with no interruption. So, this was also, I think, an opportunity, which may not have happened at another time. Yes, in a festival I would have a coffee, I would have a chat and missed part of the conversation, but in this case I was able to listen through and through quietly in my own study to these three very, very interesting people whom I admire. So, you've got to grab the opportunity of every situation, and that's where hope is.
Oh, totally. I have loved actually being able to just focus and concentrate on some of the greatest minds in this period of time. And, the 160 odd episodes that I've heard, it's just enriched my life in so many different ways, which it wouldn't have happened on physical when I'm running between crisis of welcoming 500,000 people into the ground. So totally get with you. Jane, closing remarks, hope 2021.
I think COVID has allowed for a lot of reflection for a lot of us, and things have come out of that and will keep coming out of that. That a lot of us have stood back from our lives a bit and thought, okay, so why do we do things that way? More practically, I think digital is providing hope in some ways, although there's a lot of loss that comes with it. I do think people who have never been able to access this kind of thing before have been able to do so through digital. In the Australian context, that often means people living outside the cities who don't have nearly as much access to the kinds of conversations you get at a big writers' festival. Those people now have much more access than they used to have. That's a hopeful thing and a good thing. And I would also like to say, slightly contradicting Moneeza maybe, that in Australia book sales have gone up radically over the last year. I think people in a time of crisis want great writing and they want great stories, and we've really seen that here.
That's a wonderful note to end on. Ajit, Baral, Jane McCredie, Moneeza, Hashmi, Sujata Sen, thank you so much. On behalf of all my colleagues at the Jaipur Mukbak, I hope you all will log on to some of our sessions at the Jaipur Literature Festival and at the Jaipur Bookmark starting from the 19th of February. Suraj, over to you.
Thank you, Sanjoy. This indeed was a really fascinating session. Thank you so much, Sanjoy, for driving it so brilliantly. And thank you, Ajit, Jane, Moneeza, and Sujata for this amazing conversation and joining us from different parts of the world. We do hope to welcome you next year in person for Jaipur Bookmark. But thank you for being part of this year's virtual JBM. And thank you all for watching and being a great. We hope you all enjoyed this conversation and will join us for another such roundtable on Tuesday, 2nd February, where directors from around the world will join us to discuss and share their views on similar topics. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy. Goodbye.